Fish on Fridays, my name's Al McCauley. And in the year 1802, some archaeologists were doing an excavation in the catacombs of Priscilla in Rome. And they came across the remains of a young girl who was buried underneath a tomb that they'd already recognized. They didn't know if she was there. And on this tomb, on the cover of her sarcophagus, was some Latin words that were jumbled. They had been moved around. But the words, when they were put into proper order, said the following in Latin: Pax tecum Philomena, which means peace be with you, Philomena. And it was at that point in 1802 that we discovered who we call now today, Saint Philomena. And Saint Philomena is a saint we remember every year on August 11th. And we think she died right around the year 304, 305. We're not sure, but she was a young girl, about 14 when she died. And so she didn't live a long life, but we know she died right before the end of the reign of the Emperor Diocletian. And I'll tell you why as we progress on with this. The fact that her remains were found, and now we know that there's this person named Philomena, although we have absolutely no knowledge about anything who she is. Once her remains were found, the miracles started to happen. People saw this girl, the remains, and they wanted to know who she was, but people started to have miracle cures for health concerns that they had. Now, fast forward about 2 decades later, in 1833, there's an Italian nun named Sister Maria Luisa de Gesù, and she is going to record that she has an apparition. She's visited by Saint Philomena, this young lady, and she is going to fill in the details, if you will, and she's going to give this nun everything she needs to know about her life, her own life. And so she talks about the fact that she was part of a Greek royal lineage, the fact that she had martyrdom at an early age, at 13 or 14. And what she was told, this nun was told, was that Philomena was a Greek princess. And she lived on a Greek island called Corfu. And her family, since it was royalty, at one point took in the visiting Roman Emperor Diocletian. And he became instantly smitten with Philomena. He loved her because she was just gorgeous. She was a beautiful young lady. She had impeccable manners. She just seemed to be older than her age, mature beyond her years. And he was, like I said, just smitten, and he wanted to marry her. He instantly fell in love and wanted to claim her as his wife. And he even said to her folks, listen, I was going to attack your island, but consider this a peace treaty. If you let me marry your daughter, I will leave your island alone, and in fact, I will give it protection. The folks, of course, are going to readily agree to this. Philomena, however, is going to say not so fast. Philomena was introduced to Christ and Christianity and dedicated her life to Christ. And so she wanted nothing to do with an earthly marriage to a man at all, much less the Roman emperor, who probably had other wives at that point as well. And so she just wanted nothing to do with it. Well, Diocletian flew into a rage and had her imprisoned for 40 days. And she was lonely, she was discouraged. And it said that Mary appeared to her, the Virgin Mary appeared to her to give her comfort, to help her remain steadfast in her desire to be faithful to Christ. Because she went these 40 days and didn't seem the worse for wear, Diocletian got even more angry and he ordered that she be flogged. And unfortunately for him, as soon as she was whipped, it said that angels came to minister her to heal her so that the pain and the wounds would not fester. They would not be something she would experience long term. So he did the next thing. He ordered that that an anchor with a rope be tied around her and she cast into the sea where she'd be drowned. And as soon as she was cast into the sea, it's like the sea vomited the anchor back up onto the shore and she was saved. So then he had his best marksman shoot arrows at her. And it said that those arrows turned around in mid-flight, went back and impaled the archers themselves, killing them. And so as a last resort, he had her beheaded, which was he was finally successful in dispatching of Philomena. And the people who loved her and who knew her came and buried her in what, again, we call the catacombs of Priscilla. She was then buried. Somebody else was buried on top of her casket, and so we didn't find her for almost 1,500 years. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. And if you think about, this was not written down. This is something that we believe happened when this nun had this apparition, this vision of Philomena, who filled her in on all the details of her life. Because prior to that, all we knew was there was a young girl named Philomena, and somebody wished her peace when she died, to rest in peace. When you see Philomena in art, based on the story I just told you, when you see her in art, she's portrayed with many, many symbols. The lily is one of them, the flower of purity and of new life. The palm branch, which has always been a symbol of martyrdom, and she was clearly a martyr. There's a scourge, a whip sometimes associated with her because it indicates the kind of torture she had to deal with. Sometimes she's either holding or next to her, you'll see arrows because, again, that talks about her trials and the tribulations she endured when those archers tried to kill her. And then ultimately, you'll see her holding or next to an anchor, which was another way that they tried to torture her. But ultimately, the anchor is a symbol of hope. And so it's something that we, like her, have hope in our faith in Christ that we will be able to stand the test and stand the trial. Now, fast forward a little bit further, 1837, the Pope at the time, Gregory the 16th, is going to canonize Philomena. He heard about this story and he became enthralled and he prayed to her and felt that she was interceding with his prayers. In fact, there's a quote attributed to him. He said, "Whatever you ask of Saint Philomena, she will obtain for you." And it's not just him. Throughout the years, in the last 200 years or so, saints, canonized saints, have come to recognize her as a wonder worker, as a miracle worker, not least of which are St. John Vianney and Pope St. Pius X. They both had strong devotions to Philomena and encouraged their flocks, their faithful, to pray to her, especially if they had a troublesome case, if they had a hopeless case. So I know we Catholics think of patron saints and for hopeless cases, we sometimes think of St. Rita or we think of St. Jude, and rightly so. Add Philomena to that list because now she is also considered one of those saints you go to as a wonder worker when you have a hopeless situation that you're faced with. So Philomena is a great person to know. She's, like I said, a miracle worker, somebody that you can pray with and intercede for. And there's several lessons that we can get from looking at her life, not least of which is the fact that she put God before all else. Even in front of her this potential nice setup she would have had by marrying the emperor himself. She said, "No, I'm committed to Christ. That's what I'm going to do." She persevered through that. She had unwavering faith, and that courage in the face of those trials, of that persecution, is really, really inspiring. And hopefully it is for you too. And the last thing I would say in more of an abstract way is to remember that the truth cannot remain buried or hidden for long. Her truth, her story was hidden and buried for 1,500 years, but it still came to light. It still saw the light of day, and we still know about her, and we still venerate her. What's fascinating about that, though, is in 1969, and I've mentioned this little tidbit in other episodes, in 1969, the Catholic Church took about 90 saints and said, we're going to remove them from the liturgical calendar. Not because they're not important, but because we don't have a lot of historical evidence of their existence. And so they removed her from the liturgical calendar. Now, the church was quick to point out that we can still have a devotion to St. Philomena, we can still pray to her, but you're just not going to see her on the liturgical calendar. In fact, if you were to look up on a liturgical, I'm having trouble with that word today. If you look up on a calendar and you look for a saint's feast day on August 11th, you're going to see St. Clare of Assisi. You probably won't see Philomena, but it is also her feast day as well, like I said, August 11th. So anyway, great saint to know. Somebody to go to, especially if you have a hopeless cause in your life that you'd like to pray for. So if you want to share this content, we would love it. We would love it if you'd subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us on Facebook. But either way, we hope you will keep tuning in every Friday for Fish on Fridays. Until next time, please be good to each other and God bless.